He would love nothing more than to divide our country based on race, religion, gender, orientation, or immigration status. Because this is the only way he knows he can prevent the solidarity of us working together across all of our differences.
You know, it's really quite interesting how people have tried to manipulate people and how to intimidate people and change their minds. This has been going on since we've been in America.
Have you ever witnessed a political speech so unexpected that it completely changed the energy in the room within minutes? Well, that's exactly what happened when Ben Carson stepped up to the microphone and delivered remarks that immediately ignited reactions across the political world. Before we get into this incredible moment, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. We cover the biggest political stories, major debates, and viral moments you won't want to miss. American politics has become increasingly divided over the last several years. Politicians frequently accuse one another of fueling division, while voters are often left trying to determine who is telling the truth. That backdrop is what made this particular speech so significant. The conversation surrounding race, political identity, and national unity remains one of the most debated subjects in modern America. Different leaders offer different explanations for why the country feels so divided, and those competing narratives continue to shape public opinion. During his remarks, Ben Carson focused heavily on the issue of division and how groups throughout history have often been separated into competing categories. He argued that when people become focused entirely on differences, it becomes harder to find common ground and work together towards shared goals. That message immediately resonated with many people in attendance. Carson also spoke about the importance of independent thinking. He reflected on his own experiences growing up and how his political views changed over time as he began exploring perspectives different from those he had previously accepted. According to Carson, one of the most important things any citizen can do is listen to multiple viewpoints before reaching conclusions. He suggested that healthy debate and open discussion are essential parts of a functioning democracy. As he continued speaking, the audience became increasingly engaged. Many appeared to connect with his message about avoiding labels and thinking beyond political stereotypes. But what really grabbed attention was his personal story. Carson explained that for much of his life, he was surrounded by a particular political viewpoint. Over time, however, he began examining ideas from different perspectives and found himself questioning assumptions he had previously accepted without much scrutiny. Whether people agreed with him or not, his story highlighted a broader issue affecting millions of Americans today: the challenge of navigating political information in an age where competing narratives are constantly battling for attention. And that's where things became especially interesting. Because Carson wasn't simply talking about politics. He was making a much larger argument about personal responsibility, critical thinking, and the importance of evaluating ideas independently. If you've made it this far, let me know in the comments. Do you think Americans are becoming more open-minded politically, or are we becoming more divided? I want to hear your thoughts. As the speech progressed, it became clear that Carson was building toward a broader message that would spark discussion far beyond the room itself. What happened next would become one of the most talked about portions of the entire event.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your courage to be here, because in the society that we live in today, it takes a lot of courage to say that you're supporting President Trump. And, you know, it's really quite interesting how people have tried to manipulate people and how to intimidate people and change their minds. This has been going on since we've been in America. You know, you go back to the days of slavery, you know, and in a lot of the states there were more slaves than there were owners. So what did they do? They had to divide the slaves. So they told the ones in the house, you're better than the ones in the yard. And the ones in the yard, you're better than the ones in the field. And then after slavery was over, the light-skinned ones, you're better than the dark-skinned ones. And on it went, trying to divide people. Today, they say, if you are a conservative, then you are somehow an Uncle Tom, you're a horrible person, you're a demon. What a bunch of crap, you know, but, you know, it's been going on for hundreds of years. And it's really time to put a stop to it. So I am very happy to see that you have the courage to come out. You know, it doesn't bother me anymore because, you know, I only worry about what God thinks. I don't worry about what these other people think. But, you know, sometimes people ask me, what happened to you? You changed. I haven't changed. I changed about 35 years ago because, you see, I grew up in Detroit, a bastion of liberalism. They call it progressivism now. They keep changing the name. But anyway, then from there to Boston, a bastion of liberalism. Back to Detroit, and then to New Haven, Connecticut, a bastion of liberalism, and then to Ann Arbor, Michigan, a bastion of liberalism, and then to Baltimore, Maryland, a bastion of liberalism. So I had no chance. I was a liberal. I was way out there. And then I did something that liberals are never supposed to do. I listened to a conservative. I listened to Ronald Reagan. And I said, you know, he doesn't sound like a horrible racist person. He sounds just like my mother. And at that point, I started thinking for myself. And that made a big difference. It made a big difference in my medical career, too. I didn't do what everybody else did. I always started thinking out of the box. How do you solve this problem? And that's the reason that God gave us these complex brains. Your brain has billions and billions of neurons, hundreds of billions of interconnections. It remembers everything you've ever seen, everything you've ever heard. It can process more than 2 million bits of information in 1 second. Would God give you something like that just so that you can be a sheep and follow what somebody else tells you to do? Or to think for yourself? And you know, don't you find it fascinating that so many people say the president's a racist? He's a horrible racist and everything he does. Well, you know, it seems to me like some years ago, Jesse Jackson actually gave the president an award in New York City because he opened so many opportunities for black people. Is that what a racist does? And then when he moved to Palm Beach, he was right on the forefront to fighting the clubs who were not admitting Jews and blacks. Does that sound like what a racist would do? He is the one who finally got the Second Chance Act done. Does that sound like what a racist would do? When he took office, he brought the office of HBCUs to the White House so it could get appropriate attention, more money than ever. Opportunity zones so that people could take this money and direct it to the places where people did not have opportunities before. An economy where you have the lowest unemployment rates for black people in history. And it goes on and on and on. Let me tell you something. If he's a racist, he's an awfully bad one. He needs to go get a lesson from the real racists. The people who look at somebody like you and me and they say, because your skin is a certain color, you have to think a certain way. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you. And they start calling you names. Those are the real racists. But you know, the president believes that a rising tide lifts all boats. He doesn't believe in identity politics, and that's why he's doing things that work for everybody. And we should be happy about that. And the media, they like to pick on him, any little thing. You know, he's not perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. The only one who ever was perfect was Jesus, and they crucified him. So, you know, think about this. And we need to just look at the big picture. Think about all the incredible things that are happening. Think for ourselves and be missionaries. Go out and talk to your family, talk to your friends, help them to realize, because see, if all they're doing is looking at certain media, they don't even know about these things that we just talked about that he has done. And so they can perpetrate this horrible image of him being a bad person. It is absolutely not true. I work with him all the time. He's a wonderful person. He's become a good friend. You remember during the campaign when we were having a debate and I couldn't hear my name. I came out, I stood there, I was waiting to hear everybody else gleefully walk past. He was the only one who stood with me until they straightened it out. That's the kind of person that our president is. He is my friend, and he will be your friend as you get to know him. Ladies and gentlemen, the 45th president of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
The moment Ben Carson shifted the discussion toward Donald Trump, the atmosphere changed immediately. And before we continue, if you're enjoying this analysis, take 2 seconds to hit the subscribe button. It helps the channel tremendously and ensures you never miss our latest political coverage. For years, Donald Trump has remained one of the most polarizing figures in American politics. Supporters point to policy achievements and economic results, while critics focus on rhetoric, leadership style, and broader social impacts. Carson entered directly into that ongoing debate. He challenged narratives that portray Trump in a negative light and pointed to several examples that supporters frequently cite when discussing Trump's record in office. Among the issues Carson highlighted were economic opportunities, criminal justice reform initiatives, support for historically black colleges and universities, and various policies designed to encourage investment in underserved communities. The audience responded enthusiastically. For supporters in attendance, Carson's remarks represented a defense of accomplishments they believe are often overlooked in public discussions. Critics, however, interpreted the speech differently. They argued that evaluating a president requires looking beyond policy outcomes alone and considering other factors as well. This disagreement illustrates one of the defining characteristics of modern politics. Two people can watch the exact same speech and walk away with completely different conclusions. One person sees evidence. Another sees selective interpretation. One sees courage. Another sees controversy. That's exactly why moments like this spread so rapidly online. Political speeches rarely become viral because everyone agrees with them. They become viral because they touch on issues that people care deeply about and already have strong opinions on. Carson understood that his remarks would generate discussion. In many ways, that discussion became just as important as the speech itself. The larger question wasn't simply whether people agreed with every point he made. The larger question was whether Americans are willing to engage with viewpoints they may not initially agree with. That's a challenge facing citizens across the political spectrum. And as the debate continued, Carson's central message remained consistent. Think independently, examine evidence carefully, and avoid allowing labels to define every conversation. By this point, reactions online were already pouring in. Some viewers praised the speech as a powerful defense of free thought. Others criticized it as overly simplistic. But regardless of where people stood politically, everyone seemed to be talking about it. If you haven't already, drop a comment below and tell me which point from Carson's speech stood out to you the most. Also, don't forget to like this video because it helps more people discover the discussion. What came next elevated the conversation even further and shifted attention away from politics alone toward a much bigger question about the future of public discourse in America. One of the reasons this speech continues generating attention is because it touched on something bigger than any individual politician. At its core, the discussion was about how Americans communicate with one another, how they process information, and how they form political opinions. Before we dive deeper, make sure you're subscribed and turn on notifications. We bring you major political developments, analysis, and breaking stories every week. In today's media environment, people often consume information from sources that reinforce viewpoints they already hold. As a result, political disagreements can become increasingly intense because different groups are operating from completely different assumptions. Carson's speech challenged listeners to think critically and evaluate ideas for themselves. Supporters viewed this as an empowering message. They argued that citizens should never allow political parties, media outlets, or public figures to do all of their thinking for them. Critics, meanwhile, maintained that some issues require deeper analysis and broader context than what was presented during the speech. These differing reactions demonstrate just how complex modern political discussions have become. Yet perhaps the most important takeaway is that conversations like this continue happening because people care deeply about the future of their country. They care about fairness. They care about opportunity. They care about leadership. And they care about finding solutions to problems that affect everyday Americans. That's why speeches that challenge assumptions often receive so much attention. Even when people disagree, the conversation itself becomes part of the democratic process. Whether viewers found Carson's arguments convincing or not, his remarks succeeded in sparking discussion among millions of people who may never have thought about these issues in exactly the same way before. And perhaps that's one of the most powerful aspects of political speech. Not that everyone agrees, but that people are encouraged to engage, question, analyze, and participate. Now I want to hear from you. Do you believe speeches like this help move the national conversation forward, or do they deepen existing divisions? Share your opinion in the comments section below. And if you found this analysis valuable, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with friends and family. Your support helps us continue bringing thoughtful political commentary and in-depth analysis to viewers around the world. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.